Hey everyone, Ingrid here, and today I want to share with you my review of the Arteza Twin Markers. I got the 48 set, and these are, they have two tips, as you can see. So one is kind of a brush tip, but it's not a real brush, it's foam, and then the other one is more of a fine tip, and these were sent to me by Arteza. I asked to review these because they looked really cute, and they sent it to me very kindly, but this video is not sponsored and all opinions are my own. So I am all about using what I have these days, and I thought it would be really fun to try them instead of just swatching them for you. I thought it would be fun to pull out one of my coloring books. I don't have a lot, I have like two, and this is one of them, maybe three. But this is a really cool one. I love these illustrations, and I thought it would just be a fun way to see the color range and see how they behave, and yeah, just get a feel for them. So the price for the 48 set is around $34, but it changes depending where you are in the world. I'm just showing you the tip. This one is very neon, so you do have a few colors here that could be used as kind of traditional highlighters if that is something you find useful. And the thing is, with coloring books, I find that with pencil it's a little bit hard. I mean, you have to kind of work hard to get a nice even cover on the images, and a lot of coloring pencils, if they're like especially wax based, they are somewhat opaque, so you don't get the full effect of the illustration that you're coloring. And especially in this type of book where you have a lot of detail and you have a lot of shading, I feel it works best with something that is transparent, like these markers. Now let's talk a little bit about the color range. I think the color range is really good. There aren't a lot of very similar colors, and there are a lot of bright colors, which I appreciate. That's more my my cup of tea, and there are a few neutrals, but not too many. All in all, really great color range, and they feel really nice. And I was also really pleasantly surprised by the fact that most of them are quite smooth when you color with them, so you don't get a lot of streaking. That's not true to every single one, but for the most part I felt that they worked really well. Some do get a little bit of streaking. I think it also depends, with some pigments and colors are just harder to formulate, so I think that's part of it. But these feel really nice. The tip feels really nice, both edges, but especially the one that has that brush tip. I feel that's where, you know, some markers just feel better than others, and I really enjoyed this. Now I want to say that these kind of markers are not the type of supply that I use all the time, as opposed to, say, watercolors or watercolor pencils. But I think, especially if you have kids, a good set of markers with really great colors is always really nice to have. And I feel these would be great in coloring books. They didn't bleed through to the other side, I checked. In your planner, especially having both ends is really makes them versatile. You can write with them, you can highlight with them, you can draw with them in more detail, or fill out areas with the brush nib or pointy nib or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I really enjoyed them, and I was also really happy to get some use out of this coloring book. And I feel with such a marker, it's not such a slow process as sometimes it can be with pencils or with really fine liners. So I think if you like coloring books and you have ones that you know, you don't really need to do a lot of the shading yourself, I think these markers are great. And I also like that there are a lot of kind of lighter, medium toned colors and only a few that are very, very dark, which also works for my personal preferences. So you can see beautiful yellows and then oranges and lovely shades of pink. I was really, as I was using these, I just kept thinking how much I'm enjoying it, and a lot more than I expected to. Again, mostly because I don't use these types of markers very often. Now, on the packaging, it says water-based ink, blendable, ideal for watercolor techniques and journaling. I don't think I agree with the way that they're describing it. The second part of the video, I went with these into my regular watercolor sketchbook and just like sketched with them. Now, they aren't water resistant, so that is true that you can kind of, I wouldn't say blend them, but if you draw something with a marker and then you go over it with a wet brush, some of the ink releases. But because I suspect these are dye-based inks, they're very staining, and most of it just goes into the paper, and so you can't really get a blend. You can, draw something and then go over it with a water brush and get a little bit of pigment released and a little bit of shading. But yeah, I wouldn't say these are really blendable. You can paint over with one color, let's say take a pink and then go over it with a yellow, and you will get an orange because they're very transparent, which I love. But it doesn't really blend. The color kind of just sinks into the paper. Maybe if you used more glossy paper, you could move them around a bit, but I don't tend to use those papers. So for the papers that I use, which are mostly watercolor paper or paper that works well with watercolors, these, they're fun. Again, you can fill in areas with them, and for the most part, they're really smooth and they don't streak and they don't bleed. But yeah, you can't, move the pigment around like you can with just watercolor. So just be aware of that. You can see this purple, for example, is a little bit more streaky. I don't know, purple, I know in makeup, purple is a problematic pigment to formulate. So maybe also in watercolors, but it still worked great. And there I was just checking to see that these didn't bleed through, and they didn't. I'm skipping a little bit ahead because I realize I don't have a lot more to say about these. I think now you can see all the beautiful pinks and blues and turquoises and some greens that are in this set. I really think they did such a great job with the color range. And now I'm just going back to the yellows, trying to complete the page. So cons, I'm trying to think what I don't like about these. I think, yeah, if you want them to really blend, no, I don't think they do that, at least not like watercolors do, but I wouldn't really expect them to perform this way. There are very few other materials that really give you that lovely smooth blend that you can get with just regular watercolors. So I think these would be just, as I said, really fun for coloring books, for planners, for kids to color things. And I plan to use them and hopefully finish this book that has been lying on my shelf for a few weeks. So let's move on now to just the second part of the demo so you can get a better idea of how they worked on watercolor paper. I went with one of the darker, more neutral colors. This is kind of an indigo color, and just sketched a face very loosely. And then I went in with the black, just seeing how it works. I really like the tip of this, both of them. I I really enjoyed the experience of using these, and I really think they're a good value for money if you're on the lookout for these type of markers. So just adding some detail, it is really convenient to have the brush tip, which also gives you that flexibility. I mean, you can get very fine lines with just using the very tip, and then if you use it on the side, you can get a thicker line, which works well when you're coloring things in your coloring book, because it just saves you time. So now you can see what I mean, how they behave when you activate it with water. You can get a little bit of bleeding, you can get a little bit of pigment. I like this look. There are definite advantages to this, that you can draw an image and then add water and get an interesting effect without, you know, completely losing your original lines. So I do feel that there's a place in my art for such a medium. Now I'm just adding regular watercolors. I just wanted to see how everything meshed together. And of course, I mean, watercolors just love to play with other mediums. And it worked well. So, you know, you can combine these with your existing watercolors or other supplies. You can see these are very staining. Once you move them and let it dry, and they dry super fast, you're done. You can't move them anymore. They're very, very staining. So now I wanted to see what kind of coverage I can get on this paper, and these are the Arteza sketchbooks, which I've talked about in previous videos. I really love them. I'm really enjoying them. I think they're great value for money, and I love the way that they look. The canvas hardcover is something I really enjoy, and you can see it's maybe there's some minimal streaking there, but all in all, I feel it gives you quite a smooth appearance. I think on camera it's even a little bit more noticeable than in real life. And here I'm trying to see how much pigment I can get from wetting that area that I completely covered with pink. And you can see I can get some. I used it for her cheeks, but it's quite minimal, I would consider. So these kind of stay put. I think these would also be really fun for urban sketching. You know, you can grab a few and take them with you. I love taking such supplies when I go out or on a trip, because I know my kids can also use them. They're not like super precious, they're not super expensive that, you know, I cringe if my 4-year-old wants to get into it. With these, I know she can play. I have the real brush markers from Arteza. I think I prefer these. The real brush marker can be a little bit drying, and you can get really fun effects with it, but I think I would buy these before I would get that set that I have reviewed in the past. I hope you find this review helpful. See you in another video soon.